We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We're going to reconvene our special council meeting. I am reconvening the February 13th, 2012 special meeting of the West Covina City Council. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilwoman Shelley Sanderson. Please rise, please.
Please join with me to the pledge to our flag. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam City Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Tui.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lane.
Here.
Councilmember Herford.
Here.
Councilmember Sanderson.
Here.
Councilmember Sykes.
Here. Reporting out of closed session, Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Members of the City Council, the record should reflect the City Council convened this evening for the items that are listed on the closed session, that all members were present with the exception of Councilmember Sanderson. That prior to recessing the closed session, the items that were listed were announced for discussion in closed session, and the following is my report. Under conference with labor negotiators, the City Council received a briefing from the city's negotiators. There was no final action taken, and there's nothing further to report. Under conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, the City Council did authorize the approval of settlement on the matter of Lenhart versus City of West Covina. The record should reflect that was approved by Mayor Tui, Mayor Pro Tem Lane, and Councilmember Sykes, and Councilmember Herford in opposition. That concludes my report from closed session. It's appropriate to continue with the open portion of the meeting.
Thank you. We're going to drop down to public comments since tonight is a special meeting of the City of West Covina Community Development Commission. And I believe the city, I'm not sure the way it's written there, but
It's actually the City Council. Our apologies, Mr. Mayor.
No problem. For both the Community Development Commission and the City Council, speakers are only permitted to speak about items on tonight's agenda under the Brown Act. Our first speaker is Carolyn Arndt, and we have John Shoemaker on deck. Carolyn, I know she was this here somewhere.
My name is Carolyn Arndt, and I come before you to speak about the finances. My way of thinking, there are 4 reasons that we are in very difficult straits. One of them is that you have isolated yourselves away from us by planning things in private and then springing them on us without any forewarning. The next thing is arrogance. That indicates that there's great arrogance at work here. Thirdly, there's ignorance, because you're not realizing that we do have a right to know about the finances and the carrying-ons of this city. And all of that leads to failure. Way back when our Constitution was being written, Samuel Adams said, "It does not require a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority to set brush fires in people's minds." And that's what has happened here. And we are angry over this financial situation. You need to really fix it, but it's a little late. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. John Shoemaker is up, and Phil Marino's on deck. Philip Marino. John.
Thank you. I sincerely hope that this idea doesn't go any farther than taking a look at it, because I don't see why, when it comes to the fire department. This is not going to save the city by any stretch of the imagination. The county is not going to take over all the liabilities that we still have and will have into the future, or things that are already in place. This is absolutely ridiculous to look at it. What I think is really kind of funny about it is that, I've heard different people say that there's a group in the city that's trying to get rid of the police and fire department, turn over to the county. And a couple weeks after that comment was made, our own city council's doing it. So I guess that was the group that everybody was talking about was going to do it. Come on, guys. You have to make the hard decisions. That's why you were put up there. If you had made the hard decisions a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you wouldn't even be discussing this. I think it's immensely amusing that at least one person who's sitting on this council was so adamant about this would never happen. I hope at least that one person sticks to their word one time on this issue, because that's not going to solve our problem. Farming it out to somebody else. The people are part of our community. They work hard in our community. They do things for our community. And becoming a firefighter in our community, you're part of it. And then turn around and farm it out to county where next week I can transfer somewhere else. They don't care. They won't care. So please keep what we have. Figure out there's other ways to save money. Might have to be creative. Think like the budget comment in the budget by the city manager said, we need to be creative and have new ideas to solve these problems. Well, it'll take simple old ones to resolve it, but you have to have the courage to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Philip Marino, please, and Red Williams is on deck. Red? No, he was over somewhere.
This is addressed to the West Covina City Council and the citizens of West Covina. Subject: what is the City of West Covina Community Development Commission debt? The citizens of West Covina demand to know the total debt of the West Covina Community Development Commission. It should be noted that neither California Governor Jerry Brown nor the California legislature saddled the citizens of West Covina with a Community Development Commission debt. It was members of the West Covina City Council, who also served as Community Development Commissioners, who voted to indebt the city to pay developers of community development projects. The developers of West Covina community development projects got paid in full, and the citizens of West Covina got the bill. The Community Development Commission never asked the citizens of West Covina for any input for any future planning of their projects. The West Covina Development Commissioner's bully pulpit was that they were trying to generate tax dollars for the city. The second question that the citizens of West Covina have for the City Council is, how much money has the general fund over the life of the Community Development Commission lent to the Community Development Fund? The third question that the citizens of West Covina have for the West Covina City Council members is, will the general fund recover all of the money that was lent to the Community Development Fund? The City Council should direct city staff to answer these three questions in the next city-issued West Covina Discover. That's the mailer that you send all citizens here in the city. That's mailed to every household. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Red?
Hello, citizens of West Covina. I'm not feeling too good today, so forgive me if my voice is not what it usually is. But maybe the city council members can sell me some snake oil so that I could feel better, because they speak with forked tongues always. In one breath, you want to save money, and then you want to rent a fire department from the county. My sister had a fire. The fire department was there in minutes. Minutes. A neighbor across the street had a stroke. The paramedics was there in minutes. If we get rid of the fire department, you better believe that the police department is next to follow. I grew up in Carson, next door to Compton. Compton did the same thing. They got rid of their police force and brought in the sheriffs. There was no more community policing. We would not get to know officer such and such, or officer such and such, or fireman Joe, or firewoman Cindy. Quit telling us you're doing things for us, and let us tell you what we want. Give us a shot. You look at us and you smile and you say, we'll take it under advisement, but then you sell public land way undervalued to whoever you say deserves it. And I gave you my name. I deserve that land, and you gave it away. You could have leased that land and continue to get money on that same land you sold, that you get one time $700,000. I got that in the trunk of my car. I know I keep talking about the same old stuff, but you keep doing the same things to us. You keep telling us what we want. We don't want a county police department. We want the same officers that we run into at the Albertsons. We want the same cops that I wave at every day because I finally got used to them seeing me drive my Benz. So now they wave instead of pulling me over. But you want to look at us and tell us what we need or what we want. We want what we want. We want what we want. Listen to us. Do you think I come here, like I said, I'll pull out my I don't do it to show off, but I got 2 million frequent flyer miles because I travel. Do you think I need to come down here and talk to you guys over and over again and tell you what we want? Listen to us. Listen to us. Quit telling us what you want and give us what we want. We elected you, and you. Give it to us. Quit talking to us like we're little kids. I'm not a kid. I got grandkids. We don't want a county fire department. We want the same fire officers that we've always had, and we want the same police officers that we always had. Quit snake oil selling us. That's my statement for tonight. Do not do it. My name is Red Williams. Remember me, y'all.
Thank you, Red. That is our last speaker of the evening, and just for the public's notice, the council didn't agendize putting the county fire issue on the agenda. It was done by city management for the budget issue. It was not done by the city council, contrary to multiple comments to that effect. And thank you very much. And Red, I could use some of those frequent flyer miles. I appreciate that. I got water instead. Mr. City Manager, where do we go from here? Do you?
Well, with your permission, I'd like to go ahead and have a staff report presented to the council, since, as you clearly indicated, this is really our recommendation to the council to consider all options and to evaluate this.
No problem. Councilwoman Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there was a couple of questions in reference to that the residents asked. I don't know if you can kind of explain those briefly as well.
You want to? You're referring to the letter from Mr. Moreno?
Correct.
All right.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Whoever's.
I'm not sure. In terms of the presentation, Mr. Mayor, did you want us to first address these questions, or do you want us to make the presentation and in that process attempt to address these questions, which I think would probably be a better approach if that's...
Whatever the council's
Because some of the
prerogative.
presentation may touch upon some of these questions and anything that isn't touched upon, you know, again, I recognize this is...
The question is, since we don't open it back up for oral communications,
Correct.
if the individual involved, Mr. Marino, doesn't get the information, how is he supposed to?
We'll
or
make
do
sure
we readdress it back after to see if that question's been answered?
Well, some of them are statements that are,
I understand that.
quite frankly, not accurate, but others, I mean, and I recognize that the public is entitled to expressing their concerns to the city council and their viewpoints, but there are some that are actually statements that the answers we can provide. And again, it's however the council wishes to address that.
Council members, does anyone?
Mr. Mayor, I'll answer the questions, and staff can confer if they're right or wrong. The first one is, did the Community Development Commission ever ask citizens of West Covina for input on any future planning of their projects? Every project that this city and every city council prior to any of us being on city council here has approved projects in public session. All of the financial information has been provided. So that would be the answer to number one, unless there's a different
That
thought.
is absolutely correct. The law requires, and the council, whether it be this city council or previous city councils, complied with the requirements of the law, that every project that was approved by the Community Development Commission or the previous redevelopment agency always was in a public forum with the opportunity for the public to make comments.
If it wasn't, it'd be a criminal act. Second question is the citizens of West Covina have for the City Council is how much money has the general fund over the life of the Community Development Commission lent to the Community Development Fund? I don't know about the life of the agency, but I know that our current loan from the city to the redevelopment agency is approximately $21 million. So that would answer that question unless staff disagrees.
Well, that's correct, and the agency has been paying on a general annual basis monthly payments from the agency to the city for quite a long time. So that has been part of the cash flow of the city.
And the third question is, will the general fund recover all of the money that was lent to the Community Development Fund? From my seat on the City Council, the state of California has taken millions and millions of dollars from the city of West Covina, and I will fight vehemently to get that $21 million, or keep that $21 million that are owed to the citizens of West Covina. That's more of a political question, I think.
And if I may follow up on that answer also, is, as the council is well aware, and I'm sure many members of the public are also well aware, it is the state that is pickpocketing the local government's money that was generated from decisions made by this city council to projects of redevelopment that created the tax revenues available for the redevelopment agency, that now the state, by elimination of the redevelopment agency, has taken out of the taxpayers' pockets of West Covina and many other communities throughout the state of California. Those funds, if they were not taken by the state, would be available because of the proper documentation of the transfers between the general fund and the redevelopment agency, would be available to pay back the general fund the monies that are owed. So I want to make sure that it's quite clear, and I know the council is well aware of this, and I apologize to the council if I'm editorializing. It is the state that has taken the action to abolish redevelopment agency, that has put much of this economic situation at the lapse of local government in order to bail out the state.
And just to answer more directly, Phil, some of your questions, some of the deals, whether we weren't on the council when they were done, we still have no choice but to honor the commitments made by cities. And similar to the mall deal was done in 1989 for 30 years. None of us were here. We still have to give them what was agreed to upon that time at a public hearing, which went pretty long. That was the second longest meeting in City of West Covina history, next to the McDonald's deal on Barranca. That's the longest council meeting ever. So I'm saying that obligation is still there. That obligation made the city give 85% of all the money to the mall with a base rate of, I believe it was $1.4 million, but otherwise 85% of all the money generated went to the mall. That was done by a different city council. No member up here was done there, and then after 15 years it reverted that they get 70%. Some of that money you will find on the budget when they talk about it. That's the $2 million community facility district payment that we get. It's a transfer between the redevelopment agency and the city. The other money, the $21.5 million, it has an interest rate that the city has charged the redevelopment agency, which is another entity owned by the city and its residents, at 10.5%. That we generate $2.6 million, which you're going to see up here shortly. That goes to the general fund. So just 2 loan payments to the general fund from the redevelopment agency is $3.8 million. That potentially could go away. No question. The redevelopment agency balances goes up and down based on over the years as different deals get done, and also you have to take into account present value of assets owned by the redevelopment agency. It's easy to say they're 100% in debt to a certain level, but they may own 175 to 200 acres of property within the city of West Covina that may have a value. That can be subject, argumentative. Some people could say it's worth nothing or that it's snake oil. There still is property owned by the redevelopment agency and substantial properties. Some of that money is debt incurred when we built parking structures at the mall. Now, some of you can argue that was a bad investment. Almost every parking structure in the city of West Covina is owned by the taxpayers of West Covina. Every parking structure you see at the mall is owned by the city or the redevelopment agency. But that's how those deals were done. Again, prior to many of us, those deals were done like in the 75s, 1980 deals. Prior to that, the parking structures have been added on to. The parking structures over in the lakes area, if you go to the movies over there, those parking structures are owned by the city even though they're on other people's properties. Those are deals that were done, again, that if you recall, we had what was called the Atrium Project going in. The Atrium Project was 2 4-story office buildings, 2 12-story office buildings, and a 15-story hotel. The city council at that time, which no member that's up here was on the city council, then leveled all of our downtown. They took out the pantry, the car wash, Sherry Hill Volkswagen, Rice Honda, Snyder's Meats. You can just go by and mention all the different businesses. That was done when I got on the city council. The only thing there was 2 4-story office buildings. Everything else was vacant. And that's when we went through trying to revitalize what failed projects. Had been through 2 different projects there. One was the office building projects with the Interscope Hotel. And that, again, that was called the Atrium. They had many different proposals that transpired during that time, and the city bought that land. Some of the debt happens when the city bought that land. They sell it for less than they paid for it back to the developer because we bought property. You level the improvements. No different if you bought your home. You level the house on your home. Or you level a house on your property and you have a raw lot. The raw lot is clearly worth less money than your home was prior to it when you had the home there. So that's normally how the cities get involved. They take the improvement to assemble property, they level the improvement on the property and turn over the raw land to the particular development, and that's where you get your development to go forward at, and that's where some of these different things happen. The redevelopment agency plays the difference. They cover the difference in the loss. Most people will not go out and buy property, level something for you, and take the loss. They will buy the raw land, and that's how the auto mall was built. A lot of this indebtedness is from the auto mall back and all the different deals that were done there over the years when the 15 homes were leveled. I don't know if some of you remember when we purchased, and again, no member of this council was on the city council then, when we leveled the homes and increased the auto mall when they leveled 2 blocks over there, and everyone was relocated. Those things all come at a cost because we bought the homes at fair market value, leveled the homes, and sold the land back to the different people at that time. One was Val Faytech. I believe he owned the Mazda dealership and the Jaguar dealership way back then, and Ziad Al-Hassan built the Mitsubishi dealership way back then. I mean, things happen, and that's where some of the debt goes. When you talk about over the life of the thing does swing. It does change, Phil, but I believe there are assets owned by the redevelopment agency as well as the cash on hand. And I believe if you look at that overall, I think it's fairly close and fair to what almost every other city does in the state of California. Some of these other things that we have no idea. It's in court. We can't. No, we don't. The Supreme Court's making the decision, not us. We don't have it. We have an actual loan document, and we have a loan document voted on in public for the last 30 years here, the city. And those loan documents, the state of California right now is arguing that they're all invalid, going back 30 years. It's not something that happened yesterday. It's not something that happened 10 years ago. The Supreme Court has ruled any money loaned to the redevelopment agency is null and void, period. We don't have a say in that, even though we've been collecting the money for over all these years, and the debts, the bonds that we get into were guaranteed by those income streams as required by law. They have loan attachments to it. We don't control it, so I can't give you the final answer. The Supreme Court has taken it under decision right now. They have rendered a temporary decision. City of Cerritos and many other agencies have filed a challenge to it. The Supreme Court would not issue a stay on the outcome of it, but they are taken under submission and will give a ruling on that. In the interim, Assembly Speaker John Perez has a bill pending before the State Assembly where they will make all those payments, the monies that are owed to the cities from their redevelopment agencies, a valid debt. And the money will be passed through to cover those. That still has not been voted on, and there's no guarantee the governor of this state will sign that into legislation, even though it will probably pass both the Senate and the Assembly houses. So we're waiting to see, too, on a lot of those. Councilwoman Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank you for saying what you have said, as well as Councilmember Herfert and our city attorney. And it seems kind of clear to me that people aren't really understanding what we're faced with and why we are here today. And I hope that everybody was listening to what the mayor had to say, because it is exactly what is happening. None of us created the redevelopment agency, and it's interesting to sit here and just feel like you're getting completely attacked, which I want to work with the residents. We have a lot to get through here. You know, the finger pointing, it just really has to stop. I think we're all doing the best we can. Tonight's agenda, Mr. City Manager, I did discuss with you earlier. I talked to the City Manager quite a bit on different ideas and ways that we can overcome what we're faced with and the state takeaways. And I believe I had to question our finance director. It was like over $30 million that is being raided from the city over the last few years. And it's just, you know, it has to be understood that if you were trying to pay your bills and somebody kept taking the money that you made, you'd have a tough time doing it, and that's why we're all sitting here. One of the things I talked to the city attorney about was we were talking about doing like a survey of the residents about the different things that they would be amenable, and to sit here and say we're hiding things and doing things isolated. And we have meetings. Actually, we've had one meeting every week for the last 3 months because of what we're going through. And I do appreciate people actually coming, because some of our meetings, nobody's here, and people come up to the podium and say that we're hiding things. Well, I've never seen them at the meetings that we do have, and we try and do our Discover. We're trying to put what we can out there. That's why tonight's meeting. But we were going to do a survey of the residents to see if they were interested in going county and the different options that they have as a resident. Because what I'm reading here on tonight's agenda, Mr. City Manager, is you're asking for a request to get a proposal. Now, would that be done first, or would that be done after the survey?
Well, I'd like to go ahead and do the whole presentation, if we can go ahead and do that. But the answer to your question is that the survey would run somewhere concurrently as we start gathering data. But we can get into more of the specifics through our report.
Because from my seat, this is really kind of the first time this has been in front of me for a decision, and I have not voted, nor have I expressed whether I want to go county or not. I like our fire. They're amazing, and I'm proud and honored to say that we do have our own police and fire, and I want to keep it that way. However, you know, we're here tonight just to hear some options, so I wanted to make sure that that was clear, and I was interested in surveying the residents to see what changes and whatnot they'd be willing to make. So thank you very much, Mr. City Manager.
I see no other hands. Mr. City Manager, if you can make your presentation.
Yes. Well, let me start by saying, first of all, yes, we do have great city services. We have great personnel, both in public safety and non-public safety in the city, and everyone has been rowing a boat with major staffing cuts as a result of the economy, internationally as well as nationwide, and for our state as well. We're not hiding anything by putting this report together. In contrast, we're trying to provide the City Council some options so that you can at least make some informed decisions along with the community. And so by presenting this report to the Council, we want to give you options, so at least you know what the fiscal impacts are of the different options and what the implications are, the pros and the cons, and we want to go ahead and get a process started to at least understand what your options are. We want to give the community facts, and that's what we're trying to do, is initiate a fact-finding process so we can gather data. As you know, we were on track to develop a balanced budget. But as a result, again, of the state's action, it creates instability for us. And as Councilmember Sanderson has said, since the 1990s, the state has taken away $40 million from the city, and that's just our community alone. And this is a common thread that has been complained about city after city statewide about the takeaways that have occurred statewide from cities, so it makes it very difficult for us year after year after year to deal with budgets when it's a moving target when it comes to the state. The state continues to raid our accounts, and obviously even the federal government with its trying to deal with its issues has changed the rules of the game every year. And so cities organized statewide in the last few years trying to initiate initiatives to protect local revenues and protect the dollars that are generated from within the communities and keep those dollars being spent locally. Most recent of those initiatives was Proposition 22, which was to hold off the hostile takeovers by the state. And so as a result, as you mentioned, the Supreme Court did rule that the state had the ability to disband the redevelopment agency, which created immense consequences statewide, and those are consequences the state is going to have to live with for decades to come. And in discussions with many of my colleagues in other parts of the state, you know, we're probably on the there are many cities that are impacted far worse than we are with these numbers, and there is a strong likelihood that there will be more bankruptcies filed statewide as a result of these actions, and that seems to be a common message that's being sent throughout the state. So we are not alone in these impacts, and as we've discussed with the council, we do need to fight these, and we have a set of plans here that we want to discuss with you, and I'll refer this over to Mr. Bachman now to get into the details.
Okay, first I'd like to just frame the major issue here that we're facing. And, you know, initially when we went into this budget and we met with the City Council back in December, we talked about a $3.8 million deficit that we would be facing in the 2012-2013 fiscal year. We adopted a budget this year, the current year 11-12, with a $1.9 million deficit, with the stated goal that coming into 12-13 we knew we had to balance the budget, and that was the intent. That $1.9 million grew to $3.8 million due to continual rising pension costs, you know, some increases in workers' comp, other liability costs, and rising medical costs. These were things that we expected to occur. I think it's important to point out that the $3.8 million is the smallest preliminary deficit we've faced in years. We've typically, over the last 3 to 4 years, have faced deficits in the early stages of the budget process anywhere between $7 and $10 million. And the City Council, through a number of action, has whittled those things down to substantial levels, to the point where it put us in position going into next year that we would be able to balance the budget, and that was clearly the intent. We've weathered a lot in doing that. We've, you know, when we sat here a couple of years ago, we talked about this recession was going to affect us in 3 phases. The first phase was going to be sales tax, the second phase was going to be property tax, and the third phase was going to be rising pension costs. And we've weathered the first 2, and sales tax is starting to turn around. It's not back to where it was before the recession hit, but it's going in the right direction. Property tax didn't take near as big a hit as we thought it would. A lot of it has to do with the makeup of this community, an older, stable residential base. That seems to have bottomed out, and we're right now in the middle of the third phase, which is the increases in the pension contribution rates. And I think it's important to know that these are not items that are unique to West Covina. These are issues that every city in the state has faced. The one stage we didn't count on, and the one state that would have been a little hard to predict, was the total elimination of the redevelopment agencies. And that's taken this to a whole new level as far as challenges go. We were pretty confident that we could reduce that $3.8 million deficit through a series of labor negotiations, which for the first time in 5 years we have open contracts with our public safety unions, which make up roughly 80% of the budget, and another series of staffing, restructuring, looking at different ways that we conduct business within the city. That plan kind of got changed when the Supreme Court ruled that not only could the state eliminate redevelopment agencies, but redevelopment agencies couldn't voluntarily go forward by making a continuation payment. So what that immediately does is it takes that $3.8 million deficit, and at a best-case scenario, it puts us to about a $5.6 million deficit. That's because we lose some administrative revenues that were received from the redevelopment agency, as well as cost sharing of other administrative functions that the agency participates in. That amount of money is gone. That's a given in the best-case scenario for the debt going into, or for the deficit going into next year's budget is $5.6 million. The real contingency out there, and it's been talked about a little bit here this evening, is we don't know what the end game is. We don't know what the status of the loans or other agreements between the city and the redevelopment agency are. The legislation that was adopted by the legislature and signed by the governor stated that any agreements between the city and the redevelopment agency were no longer valid. And in many cases, these agreements go back to the 70s. This agency, and there's some comments made earlier about the debt of the agencies. Well, redevelopment agencies, by their nature, have to have debt. That's the only way you receive tax increment is you incur debt. And as your tax increment grows based on projects done within a redevelopment agency, you pay off that debt with future tax increment revenues. It's just the mechanism of which redevelopment agencies were created with. And so agencies necessarily have to have debt to receive the tax increment. This agency has historically borrowed heavily from the general fund rather than going out to the bond market. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was a cheaper route to go with the interest rates double-digit out in the market. This was a better approach to take. So we actually generally have more city debt than we do redevelopment agency bonded debt. And very valid when entered into. They're being paid down, based on amortization schedules, based on what we project to receive over tax increment over the life of the redevelopment agency. What we didn't plan on was somebody coming along out of the middle of nowhere and say these agreements that have been valid for 30, 40 years are no longer valid. So that's the risk here, and the risk here is that we lose $1.9 million, which is the annual interest on the general fund loans, and the $1.1 million, it's the loss of the sales tax reimbursement agreement, which is an agreement we established some years ago to reimburse the general fund for the sales tax that it's pledged for security for the bonds that were issued to do the improvements at the Westfield Mall next door. So that has the potential to raise the deficit to $8.6 million. That one is going to, if held up, is going to be quite challenging. We'll talk about a little bit about the legality as we go through the rest of the presentation here. But what we've initially approaching is a way to close the $5.6 million deficit. It's going to take a bit more effort. It's going to cut into staffing because staffing is 83% of the general fund budget. That's, as a service organization, most of your money is going to be in staffing. So we're going to have to look at the way we do business and look at some different ways to possibly do that more efficiently. So we've laid out a number of broad areas that we want to take a look at and give to the council for consideration to give us direction on tonight. None of the specific action that we're requesting tonight is going to result in an ultimate decision, but I think what we're asking here for tonight is some direction to go out and really study this stuff, because a lot of the stuff we don't know the answers to, and until we invest the time and effort into doing this, we're not going to know what those answers are. There's been some discussion about the county fire. We don't know what that answer is. We don't know if that's a better option, but if we don't study it, we're not going to know that answer. So we'll start and go through. There's 7 various different areas that we're going to talk about. First of all, talk about its staffing reductions. The city has already made some significant reductions in its staffing. We're at a high of 445 employees back in 2007, 2008. Right now, we're currently at 347 employees. So we're down almost 100 employees from our peak staffing levels we were just a few years ago. I think it's been alluded to earlier by the city manager that, the number of staff that are still here and working are generally doing, in many cases, double duty. They've been able to pick up staff. We're looking at ways to do more things efficiently. We're looking at services and other tasks that we're, in a sense where we need to prioritize and do what's important. And some of the things we're going to have to make decisions on, either service levels or programs that we're no longer going to be able to continue providing. This 347 that we're currently at is a result of a number of vacancies that we have currently within staff. That number is going to have to be reduced currently. Again, 83% of our budget goes to staffing, so we're going to need to look at further reductions in our staffing levels. We do have 371 authorized positions currently, so there are a number of vacancies. We're going to look at various ways that we can reduce staff, shift funding. Will there be layoffs? There's that potential for layoffs. That's something that nobody wants to talk about, but I think we have to talk about it because we've had a sudden reduction in our revenue. And like anybody in their own personal life, if they've had a spouse that was laid off or they had another severe loss of income, they would have to make adjustments in what they're spending on. And we're going to have to look at ways to do that. We're going to try to do it in the best, the most humane and the most efficient way that we think is possible. But this is an area we're going to have to take a look at. We're working on some different plans to accomplish this, and those will be brought forward fairly soon. Second item is salary and benefit negotiations. And again, most of the money with the city is in salaries and benefits, and those costs have risen quite substantially over the last decade. One of the big areas that this city, much like every city in the state that provides a pension program, has seen significant cost increases in those areas. And we've got to find some ways to offset those cost increases because we're paying a whole lot more for the same service than we were just a couple of years ago. So that's an area that we need to concentrate. That'll be an area that we will concentrate on our negotiations. We have all 9 bargaining units up for negotiations this year. And it'll be the goal of the city to achieve some savings through those negotiations with the various employee groups. The third item is alternative service models. We need to look at how we provide service and evaluate what we're providing, how we're providing it, and who's providing it. We talked about all the significant hits that the city took through this recession, but the one thing we haven't done, we've talked about it some in the past, is that this is a pretty low-cost city to the residents from a taxing standpoint. We're the only city in LA County, over 80,000 people, that's got both its own police and fire department and doesn't have some sort of local dedicated tax. Most cities that have that, and you can call it a luxury, but they have revenue streams in place to pay for that. And this city historically has not had that, and we've been able to make that model work for a very long time. That model is getting very challenging right now to continue. A couple of the items we looked at here and we're recommending is that we conduct a request the County of Los Angeles to conduct feasibility studies for both the police and the fire services. And again, it's not making a final decision as to what we're going to do one way or another. It's making a decision that we're going to look at this and weigh all options. And I think, we've heard a lot here, both from the dais as well as from people coming up to speak, that we need to get this budget balanced. And I think everybody's aware of that. That's been clearly the intent of this city council, in this last year, that this needs to be done. And I mean, it's certainly achievable, but it's going to require looking at every option. Some of the options that we study may not be the right option, and it may come back and say, okay, we need to look at how we're doing things internally. But until we take a look at that, until we look at alternative models that the city can provide, whether it's different types of staffing levels, we're not going to know what the answer is. We're not going to know what the best service level or service provider is for the community. The fourth item is a community survey, and again, this gets back to going out to the community to find what levels of service they're interested in. We have a belief that there's been a fairly good level of services provided to the community based on the limited resources that this city has. And again, we're one of the lowest, on a per capita basis, one of the lowest revenue cities in LA County. And from that standpoint, it's been somewhat of a bargain for the community. But again, that just by nature of what's occurred economically over the last couple of years and just only made worse by the elimination of redevelopment, that model, we're not sure we can continue that. So we need to, we believe it is prudent to get some feedback from the community as to what they would want in terms of service levels. If they want a certain service level that can't be provided, are they willing to pay a little bit more money for that service level? But I think, and who provides that? Do we really value having our own police and fire department? Do we value doing that and paying a tax for that? What are those decision points that we need to make? And we believe a survey will give us a lot of valuable data on a number of different issues. It's not just about taxes. It's not just about contracting out certain services. It's a whole variety of issues that I think could provide us with a whole lot of data that we could use in decision making as we move forward. Lobbying efforts, number 5 on the list. We believe there's still a lot of work to be done in Sacramento. There was a strong push through the month of January up to the very end to get the redevelopment and elimination date delayed. And while there was some acknowledgement from the legislature that this really wasn't what we intended, there was such a strong push from the governor and certain leadership in the legislature that none of these moved forward. Since that January 31st elimination date, there's been several bills that have been introduced to change some of the things that occurred via the elimination of that. One of those pieces of legislation would hold those city loans between the city and the redevelopment agency valid. That's a critical piece for us because it's so significant in our structure. The $21 million represents about 75% of our general fund reserve, and to lose all that would be fairly devastating for the city. So we will continue lobbying with those. There seems to be some general support for certain things. What's it going to look like coming forward? We're still trying to sort out the various inconsistencies in the legislation that eliminated redevelopment agencies, and it really gets back to the fact that nobody expected this outcome, and now we're trying to sort through the mess that it's left in its wake. Item number 6 is economic development strategy. We lost, by elimination of redevelopment agencies, we lost our most critical economic development tool. This was a method that we used over a number of years to stimulate business activity within the city, which in turn generate tax revenues, which in turn provide for the services that we provide to the community. And that's been taken away. So we need to really evaluate what our options are, whether there's some current laws or ordinances on the books that may be able to do allow us to do some of the things we used to be able to do, whether we need to pursue some different strategies at the state level, possibly through legislation. Most people that, the redevelopment agency elimination was all about money. It was the state wanted money and they wanted to get it from cities, and this was the way this was about the only way left that they could do it. They still like low mod housing. They still like economic development. They like many of the things that redevelopment agencies did. They just didn't like the fact that money was going to that. So it's most likely going to come back in some different form. We need to evaluate that because we still need to remain active in economic development. It's served this city well over a number of years, and we think it's going to be necessary to continue that in the future. The last item is legal actions, and we need to evaluate what our legal position is. That $21 million loan to the redevelopment agency from the city, again, is a critical component of the general fund structure. There was a legal action filed in Sacramento court challenging that specific provision of the elimination legislation, and that there was a hearing on it just before the January 31st deadline. While they did not grant the stay that was being requested on the elimination date, they did address two specific items. One of them was the loans between the city and the redevelopment agencies, which means that they thought there's at least a little bit of merit there. Where that action goes, we're not quite sure at this point in time. We'll have to evaluate that, whether we have to take our own legal action at some point in time, or whether we wait and see how the legislative efforts go to do that. But it's going to be a significant component, again, just because the stakes are so high for the city. that concludes going through these various items. I think if we want to open up for council discussion, maybe take them one by one and get some feedback and then some directions. The one item that does require specific council action on, while the LA County Sheriff's does not require action by the City Council, the LA County Fire Department does require a specific action to request a study, not to authorize anything beyond that, but to request the specifics, specifically request a study. If that's the wish of the City Council, then they would need specific action on that.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can also add a few more comments here. One, despite all this, the state still has the ability to wreak havoc with cities in general because they still have the ability to continue raiding funds or delaying payments. They can delay the receipt of other revenues that are critical to city operations. I mean, nothing's still off the table for the state. The state owes the city still over $1 million in deferred payments from unfunded mandates and other types of obligations that it has. And I realize these are tough decisions for the council and for the community, but what we're trying to do through this is at least analyze the options and provide the public the highest level of service with the money that we're collecting, and that's what we're trying to accomplish with this report.
And I think there's some other things we didn't have a chance to touch on. This last year, PERS received a return on our investment that the state of California has invested in PERS of 1.1%, which is absolutely atrocious. The school district got similar. I think they got a 1.4% return in STIRS. It leaves tremendous problems out there. As you see, with the amount of money we're not recovering, if we're not getting the investment return on our investment like we are used to, that adds other problems. And then the other problem, I know our chief was just talking about this before, is on realignment, where the state of California is releasing all the prisoners to us. Thank God. They found out the way to solve all their budget problems is to send it down to the county of Los Angeles and to the local cities. So that was as recently in the paper. That was just the county of Los Angeles alone. They're no longer going to pay for sex offender registries. That payment is going put that burden on the county, and they're not going to put the money they were paying to them. And it's just little things like that. Everything adds up. $4 million here, $5 million there, and it crushes local governments in our county, because the county doesn't have the money either. And believe me, when those prisoners get released in our population, we will see a rise in crime. And the state keeps on trying to balance this budget by dumping all the things on local government, why they don't cut their staff. State of California increased their employment, why we had a 22% decrease in our employment. The state of California added people to the payroll. That's the tragedy in all this, that they don't get it. Federal government has added employees to the payroll, while local government is taking it on the chin. And I'm telling you, the realignment, I don't think people realize how serious of a police issue that's going to hit on us. Having people that we've already put away in jail or prison released back. And there's such a high rate of return, they're going to do something again. And that's very unfortunate for what's being done to our population, this so the state can save some money. I think there's better ways to save money than the state to release all the prisoners on our local cities. Does anyone have any questions of our staff right now? Councilwoman Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a quick question of staff in reference to the RDA debt, redevelopment agency debt. I understand that how the borrowing, and I hope everybody was following, and it was a great report, and really appreciate the thoroughness of it, and hope that people can kind of understand that the agency is not the same revenue source as the city. However, the city has their general fund in which the agency to do projects borrowed $21 million is what I'm understanding. So the question that was being asked earlier is we don't understand how much of that 21 we're going to lose or get back, because I'm under the understanding that since these agencies are independent of each other, the RDA has its own debt, but that's a separate debt. So could you tell me if that 21 is what we're talking about? That's the one that we're trying to make sure we get that back.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. The other part is it's a sales tax reimbursement agreement, which reimburses annually each year for amounts that of sales tax that would otherwise go to the city. It goes into these Community Facilities District. It was pledged as security for the bonds that were issued back in 1989, both property tax and sales tax. Property tax comes from the redevelopment agency. The sales tax was a direct hit on the general fund at that point in time. It's incremental, but we established a reimbursement agreement several years ago to reimburse the city for that. It generates right now about $1.1 million. It used to generate a bit more before sales tax really dropped off. We expect it to increase again due to the fact that the economy is improving and they're doing, quite a bit of improvements at the mall itself. So it's going to be a lot more than just 1.1 million right now over time. So those are the two, the city loan and the
Two
sales
things that we're
tax.
talking about, 'cause
Sales tax reimbursement agreement. And right now it's about $3 million a year
Okay.
that we would need to make up.
The comment being made, what are the taxpayers on the hook for? Well, they're not really on the hook for the RDA. It's just the money that RDA borrowed from the city of West Covina.
That's part
And
of it.
for getting our share of the financial, the 1 point, what'd you say it was 1.1?
Right, and there's other debt that the agencies incurred. They also do have some bonded debt. There's housing bonds outstanding. There's also some project area bonds
But that's the
outstanding.
redevelopment agency's
That's paid
debt,
for out of
not the
redevelopment agency
taxpayers'
tax
debt.
increment.
Okay.
And will continue to be paid. It'll just be paid by the successor agency instead of the redevelopment agency.
Do we even know, the successor agency is the one that was created, is that correct?
That'll be the one that's done by the county,
Oh, okay.
that will have some seats on the,
All
on
right,
that
so
board.
there's still so much up in the air.
That hasn't been created yet. They have some deadlines coming up.
Okay.
And we're talking tonight about looking to look at fire. Do we have a cost of how much it would cost to do the survey of the residents as we kind of discussed before? Or?
Tom, as I recall, that was about, what, 25,000?
Yes.
I think last time we were talking
Survey of
about
the
that.
residents. Is there any internet option surveys or anything that we can do that wouldn't be so costly? Because I guess I'm just speaking from my seat in reference to what we're looking at tonight. I would prefer to see what people have to say before we go down the path of LA County.
Well, again, this is not making that final decision. Again, this is just studying the different alternatives. That final decision, you won't have to make for a while, but we're trying to get the data for you, because you may find that you want to do a hybrid solution where maybe you keep your own department, but perhaps it's structured differently. Perhaps the service model is completely different than what we have now. It could be, anything in between.
Okay.
But as far as the survey, it's our experience that if you're going to do a survey, you probably want it done properly, because if it's just done over a monkey survey type of thing through the internet, it doesn't really get you the
Accurate data.
as accurate as you'd want it to get to be. And these are very scientifically done, and that they're done through a number of professionals that put this together to give you a very high reliability rating.
Right, okay, and then lastly, I just had a quick question about our CalPERS, because I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask about this, but since we're talking about the budget, we're talking about fire, and we're talking about solutions, I have a lot of other ideas, but one of the things is I didn't know what the cost would be, and I know this is something that might be scary to some, but with withdrawing from CalPERS, is there like a substantial cost, and to find an alternate retirement funding? Maybe you could bring that back. I don't know if that.
There is. I mean, part of the issue right now is we've got a large unfunded liability with CalPERS, and as a result of the losses in the stock market over 2008 and 2009. So that still needs to be addressed.
Prior to
whether
even
you're
looking.
right, whether you're within CalPERS or not.
Thank you.
I think further on, to answer your question, there may be some legal implications to that, and we'd probably have to check with the attorney on that as well further.
And then that's what I was thinking. I was throwing that out there. And then I know that, I believe it's like 50% of our funds are general funds that we generate approximately. A lot of them, people need to understand, you have transportation funds, you have certain funds that we can't do anything because it was voted on by the people to spend it on these things. And I know to bring that back to see if we can temporarily take some of those funds that we have sitting there for things that, the federal government, state government is telling us, you need to spend this on housing, you need to spend this on transportation, and not on police and fire. So what I wanted to do, but I think it would take a vote of the people to try and release temporarily some of those funds to help us through what we're going through right now.
Yes, you're right. I mean, a lot of our funds are restricted because they were voted on by the populace. In some instances, they were statewide ballots. In other instances, they were countywide ballots. And so in order to reverse those, you'd have to go back to that voting pool that created those restricted funds and ask them to release the
We
restrictions.
could on the legislative voted on, maybe go back to them, lobby them to release some of those monies. Would they have to take that to a vote as well, or do you know?
I think it depends on what source of funds, but the largest chunks of funds have been voted on, and I don't believe you can do it legislatively. It'd have to be through a vote.
Okay, well, that would be a vote of the people, but then the ones that were voted on that would take the legislators to have to vote on that.
Correct, to the extent there are some of those, yes.
Thanks.
Mayor Pro Tem Lane was next.
Yeah, I just had a question. Maybe I missed it. What's the approximate cost of the survey?
Usually in the last, a few years ago, we looked at one, it was about 20, 25,000.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Herford.
I think I heard this, and I want to just make sure. Tom, you said that we are the only city over 80,000 in population without a utility tax on assessment. Is that correct? With our own public safety?
With our own public safety departments, correct.
Police and fire. Okay.
Correct.
In Los Angeles County?
Correct.
Okay. Let me just make a couple comments. Ultimately, this is your money we're talking about here. The taxes that are owed to the city of West Covina, the redevelopment debt, the state, and it's funny to hear people come up here and accuse this city council of malfeasance and financial, mismanagement, things like that. As Tom Bachman, our finance director, said, every year we've dealt with deficits because the state's taken away money, and this year we'll deal with it again. I support our police and fire department. I would not go county on either one of them. I didn't bring that recommendation forward tonight. That was our city manager. Ultimately, the taxpayers in the city, if there was a groundswell to see if they wanted to raise taxes, I mean, that would be something to consider, but I don't see in this day and time that taxpayers are going to want to increase their taxes. It's not going to happen. I don't know what a survey would do. I mean, we've been dealt a bad hand by the state of California. Redevelopment is no longer here. Our redevelopment agency staff will have to be basically dissolved, and the people that are funded through the redevelopment fund, in my opinion, will have to be absorbed or they will have to be dissolved too. We don't have a choice. This is essentially what I thought this meeting was tonight, was to deal with the loss of the redevelopment funds. And I'm seeing it turn into something a little bit different, and I think as of February 1st, we no longer have the funds, so we need to dissolve that agency as soon as possible, and we need to dissolve the people that are supported through those funds as soon as possible. I don't think going county fire and county police is the way to do it. It's a tough decision by this council to make, but that's what we've been doing. Contrary to other people's opinions that come up here, we have been making tough decisions for quite a few years, and I think our employees would attest to that, considering we've reduced our employees by 140 in the city. The way that I foresee this city in the future is that we will have departments that provide a service to the city as long as the citizens want that service. If they no longer want that service, then those departments will not be here. So I would suggest tonight the recommendation go back to the city manager to bring back the cuts that this council feels are necessary.
No, you can't. I'm sorry. Councilmember Sykes? Are you?
No matter how we cut it, we still need to balance the budget. And it's illogical for us not to look at every aspect, every opportunity, every resource that we have available. And of course, the most important ingredient is the public. And this is a good start. I see a good crowd here tonight. Thank you. We're starting to pay attention. And it's your public safety that's on the line. So we can talk the rhetoric about who support who. The bottom line is, what do you want? What do you want? And if we don't do a survey of what it's going to cost for those services from the county, I think this is going to hinder a bit of our logic. So the bottom line is, we need to ascertain what the cost is going to be for public safety, and then we got to make a decision of how do we keep it. If we want the county, that's one way. If we want to continue with what we have in the way of our own West Covina police and fire, the bottom line is it's going to come at a cost. So we can put our heads in the sand and wish some magic to happen, but it's not going to happen if we don't do the math. We got to do the math. That's part of our problem. That's some of the reason we got here is because some folks were not doing the math before we made decisions. So it's up to you. If we don't follow through with what you want, then you need to get on the phone. You need to get on the emails. You need to talk to your neighbor. And you need to pack this house to make sure that everybody that sits up here that's going to speak for you know what you want. So we have a lot to think about. And right now, our city manager, as a professional, is doing his job. He's giving us options. That's all he's asking for tonight, is for those options to start being studied. We have a lot of options, and they need to be studied. And we don't have time to delay. The bills are coming due right now, and we don't have the money. That's what a deficit is. That's what a deficit is. So we as a community, we as a city, have to start making decisions, and we got to do them quickly. So I support those surveys being done so we can lay all our options on the table. Knowledge is power. Thank you.
I happen to take a little different tack than you, Fred. That is why we may have had some of the deficits some of you keep talking about, is because we chose local public safety over doing this thing for the last few years. And I don't know what would ever change my mind over keeping local services. I understand it costs money, and I understand we're going to have to make cuts. But to me, I'm one of the two council members that were here when we went to the county fire vote. The bottom line is what was absolutely presented in the report was the way to save money and come in lower than our current service was to eliminate fire stations. Now, the fire stations that were recommended for being removed was Station 2, which is at Puente, or Station 3 it is, at Puente and Sunset, and Station 5 at Shadow Oak and New Galles. And I know there's enough people here from those areas that would be concerned. Then I'd have Mr. Williams, who I do enjoy. Well, Red's gone right now. I don't know where he is. But saying something about snake oil then. You know, what the hell, you did something and no one got to my home. No matter what we do, You're damned if you do and damned if you don't. All I know is I am highly confident with our public safety that we have enjoyed for all these years. And I understand it comes at a cost, and I personally would not support doing a survey again, which we already did, and the vote was 70-something% to 28%. So times have changed, there's no question. But the results won't change from a 72 to 28 vote of the public to go to county services. And I'm not knocking the county services. I want to tell you, if you're used to them, it may be okay for you. When you've had the best, if it's, the difference, and I'll never forget the difference as we got along in growing up, sometimes my dad brought home square ice cream. That wasn't quite as good as when we brought home Baskin Robbins. They tasted quite different between the two. We have the best service. We have what is considered the best scoops out there, and I'm telling you, the county fire, a lot of cities are, and I want to make sure the public understands how they're funded different. In the city of La Puente, it's a fire district, which means the city council never sees the bill. It's put on your property tax. Those are no longer allowed. Then you have another system, which is the Covina system, which they pay for the county fire service out of their general fund. That's the other system. There's also another hybrid of those, which is the Pomona County Fire System, where the paramedics are all Cole Schaefer. The 911 portion for paramedics is Cole Schaefer, and it has been for years, and the county provides firefighters only. They are all different, and that's paid for as general fund. Everyone's different. Baldwin Park, it's put on their property tax bill. If you look at your property tax bill, the bonded indebtedness on your property tax bill, there is none for the city of West Covina on your bills. There is stuff for the Upper San Gabriel, there is stuff for the school districts, there is stuff for the college districts, and for the county and some state bond indebtedness, there is not for the city. We pay for our bonds, even though we're hearing about them today and getting beat up for them, we pay for them out of our operational budget, and we live that way. To get back to the county fire only, if that's the issue we're discussing first, once again, I could not in my support even during a survey, because to me the $25,000 cost to do it is an absolute waste, because I probably can't picture a time when I would even consider it. It is different. I'm not knocking. There's people that are probably county fire here or county sheriffs here, deputy sheriffs. I understand, but it's different, than the level of service we have with the amount of officers we have on duty. Everyone says they have more people on duty, but that's because some other city is covering you. And I get in this argument all the time with the city of La Puente friends I have over there. They said they have all those, deputies on duty. Well, no, you don't. You have 2 in your city. The rest are coming from Diamond Bar, City of Industry, Hacienda Heights, Roland Heights when you actually have a call. Ours are coming from our city hall. And we have more on duty than those cities. A lot of those cities, yeah, we could save money too if we put 2 officers out there. You wouldn't want that service either. And I will work to protect all those services, both police and fire, who I believe are quality services. At the local level, I understand there may be a chance for potential savings. It's at what you're saving at when you put the risk and other things onto the public. I don't believe the savings are warranted, because they're really just lowering our level of service. So to me, you have to compare apples to apples when you're comparing services. If we have 5 fire stations, what would be the cost for them providing 5 fire stations? I've already seen those numbers before. That's not where they generate savings. They generate savings by giving you less firefighters on duty within your city. They're going to say, well, Station 129 in Baldwin Park can cover the northern portion. And I believe it's Station 66 on Lemon and La Puente Road. I'm not sure the number, so I don't want to get attacked for misstating the number, but that is who's going to cover the south side. And I just don't know if I would want to have that type of service. If I lived in those areas, and I can't believe in my own mind how I could vote to do that to those residents who live in those different areas. Sometimes there are certain things you can't cut quality on. And to me, that is one of those things. So I would not support even doing a survey. We've done this thing before, and I think the public spoke loud and clear. And there was many votes, if you remember, throughout the San Gabriel Valley in all the cities that were going on at that time, whether it was Alhambra, Monterey Park. I know Monterey Park's doing it again. I just can't in good conscience vote for this, so I'm sorry. Councilwoman Sanderson.
Thank you, Mayor Tui. I'm glad that you brought up the survey. Was that in 1999 when that was done? Mr. City Manager, do you know when that survey was done?
No, I don't.
Okay. I don't know if I can just request a copy of that survey. I remember when they did come to our door, and I believe it was like 89.
I think there was a ballot measure. I'm not sure
sorry,
if it was a
90?
survey. It was a ballot
98.
measure, wasn't it?
I may have all the documents at home. I just have to search.
Yeah, I would like to get a copy of that, and Mayor Tui brings up a good point, because we're obviously looking at financial situations, and I don't think that that survey was done that long ago, and if it was somewhere around 70% in retaining our city fire, as well as hearing a few of the residents that come up tonight saying they want to retain their city fire. Now let's figure out a way to do it. We are beginning negotiations, Mr. Bachman, with our public safety units right now. And I guess if we're going to go in that direction from my seat, I'm expecting everybody to come up with some really good ideas, possibly some temporary solutions. I know that there was mention made of closing fire stations. I'm not saying I'm in support of that, but maybe we can alternate hours to save money. Firefighters, I'm hoping that you guys can come up with some ideas, as well as the police department, because we do begin our negotiations, and maybe that's, our solution at this point. That's kind of where I'm coming from. I'd like to see that survey, so if there's a way maybe I could Google it or get a hold of it. I don't know if it's...
I'll check with the city clerk's office.
Okay. Thank
I
you.
just want to make sure, because it wasn't in my comments that I proposed closing fire stations. I want to quite emphasize that. That was in the county proposal, and the rolling brownouts were done by other cities. I have not and will not support that. Councilmember Sykes?
I do want it on the record, and that it's perfectly clear. My request for the survey is not an expression of a lack of confidence in the professionals that we have that provide our public safety. All I'm saying is that in order to be totally transparent in every way, we need to study all our options, and the public should be able to read it and see it, not politics, just simply doing the math. That way we can decide if we truly want to stand up and deliver what it's going to cost to be a full-service city, in particular when it comes to our public safety. That's all I'm asking for, is that we know exactly what it's going to cost us to have quality service, and to find out if we can handle the cost. So this is not a lack of confidence in what we have. What we're talking about is finances. And we need to look at the bottom line. A balanced budget is what we need. Why do we need a balanced budget? That protects our public safety and our city services. It's as simple as that. So what we need to do is to balance the books. If it's going to take taxes, whether you call it utility taxes or whatever, we need to look at all our options as a city. And to do anything less than look at all our options is a short change. We need to get serious on the quality of life that we want to have in West Covina. And right now we're at the crossroads. We as a city have to make a decision. That's all I'm saying. And we need to be informed in order to make the best decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Lane.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the survey was done, I believe, in 2004, and I believe there was a ballot measure, I think it was 1999 or 2000, that the people voted, and they were adamantly against going to county. But with that being said, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. You know, it's really difficult trying to solve all these budget issues that we have. I think we all know that times are very difficult right now for everybody and every city, our state, the federal government as well. People are trying to come up with solutions, and we all need to work together. So I appreciate, you know, you coming here and voicing your opinions and showing an interest. And I want to thank staff for your hard work. You guys work very diligently trying to find creative ways to solve our issues here. But first, let me say, I am not in favor of contracting out our police and our fire services. I never have, and I would never do that. I'm proud of our police and fire, and you know, when it touches home, when you have to call them because you have a parent or somebody that you loved, a loved one that's in dire need, and you dial 911, and our police and our fire show up to help you, it's pretty amazing. You're so thankful that they're there. And you open that door and you see them and you're just a sigh of relief that someone's there to help you. And, you know, I've had to go through that more than once. And I want to thank you for everything you guys do for us. And with that being said, I will not vote to go county. I think it's unfortunate that the staff, you know, as they mentioned tonight, that the state has continually raided the cities and tried to take monies from us year after year to balance their budget. And now with the closing of the, or elimination of the RDA, it's extremely difficult. And our staff and this council is trying diligently to find creative ways and creative options to solve these issues. And we're going to have to make some difficult decisions. I think we're all aware of that. We're all making difficult decisions on our personal lives as well here in the city. So with that, I guess I'll leave it at that, and I do not want to go to county, and I'm not in favor of a survey.
Councilmember Sanderson.
Thank you, Mayor Tui. I had an idea, recommendation of staff. I'm hearing what everybody's saying, and I don't know if we can have a hybrid recommendation, possibly having the options that you're listing on the recommendation to investigate the county fire, but as well as giving the option of what it costs to keep our current fire. That way, when people want to access that staff report that you're kind of working on giving options, then people don't assume one way or the other whether we support LA Fire or we support, you know, our city fire. Basically, just giving everybody a menu of saying, okay, well, here's all the options, not just one option. Was that going to be included? Because it looks like it just says LA County Fire.
That was the intent. It was to give you all multiple options, including hybrids, including keeping our own department with different models.
Because it doesn't say that on here. It just says concur with the recommendation proposal to protection emergency medical service from Los Angeles County Fire Department. And then it says to investigate all options listed below, but it was just talking about the options listed below were state actions and the instability. But what I guess I'm just trying to make clear from my position is I would support your recommendation with a very clear direction that I'm not saying I'm on a, you know, none of us, whoever support this motion tonight, we would like the costs and what it would cost, you know, for city art to retain our city services as a priority.
I would not ask you at this short notice just to make a final decision on this without some facts, but the you know, the hybrid options, just to throw out a example, not the example, but I mean, you could contract out with county fire, for example, and still retain control of the ambulance and paramedic services locally. That could be another option. You could try to model our own police department after the county sheriff levels, including services within City Hall. Perhaps some of those can be contracted out as well.
Well, I'm just basically saying there needs to also be a line item of what it would cost to retain services, because I'm hearing from the majority of the council that we all want to try and keep our city services the way they are. So that's just my idea, and I would be willing to make a motion if I could get a second, if it would be appropriate, Mr. City Attorney.
There's no motion on the floor, so.
So I'll make a motion that we, the staff recommendation with the added stipulation that it also incorporates our current situation and how best to retain our city services within, in-house. I'd make a motion.
So you're,
I second that motion.
the motion is to request a proposal for fire protection from Los Angeles County and then to study what it would cost to keep in-house?
Yes, I would give you an estimate of what it would cost, what it would take to maintain that service level. So if that happens to be, you know, a couple different scenarios, we'd give you that option. That way the council and the community can look at that option as well.
I would think we'd already have that option, but I mean,
Don't you
we
know?
already know
Well,
what it
given-
costs.
Well, it's not made public, and I just...
That way you can have them all
You
in
know,
one
so
document.
everybody can say, here, look, this is what we're looking at. Let's talk about it.
Okay. So that would entail, what would the cost be to do that? What would the cost be to do that?
To do, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the whole
To do
question.
the survey?
The community survey?
Well,
We're
are we
not
talking
doing-
about the 25,000? Are we just talking about
No.
doing, okay, we're just talking about getting a survey from the county for the fire?
The
Yes.
county charges you.
Okay.
Just
Are
research.
they going to charge us, the county?
Best of my knowledge, you have to pay
They
for it.
That's not in the
They
staff
don't.
report, is it?
They give it for free now?
They don't charge you, it's my understanding, the chief can correct me if I misspeak, but they don't charge you unless you actually contract with them, is that? Once you enter,
Okay,
they don't
so-
charge you to go through the process,
Okay.
they'll do the feasibility study. Once you enter into negotiations with them to go under contract, then you would make that payment.
Can you show me another spot where they've done this, Chief? Because I know they also asked for a $4 million payment up front, which never gets discussed about when the cities never hear about that, and that you have to turn over ownership of all the stations to the County of Los Angeles. That's why it's almost nearly totally impossible, or the equipment that you currently have. You have to pay for equipment upgrades, I believe, and there's some other things. And then all the equipment becomes a county, so you can pretty much never reestablish your own service. I know
We're
those
just
costs
talking
are
about
always
the survey.
excluded out of there. I understand that, but that's also the cost of the community. You have to upgrade the equipment and the facilities up to their standards set by the County of Los Angeles, not by the City of West Covina community. So I'm just saying, it's another cost. You can act like you only want to see part of the cost. I would prefer, you know, I'm not going to support it either way, so I shouldn't say what I prefer. I just think it would be very misleading not to see all of the cost.
But I think that it's, to do the survey, to get the county to do the survey, you're saying there's no cost, right?
No cost to do the survey, just to clarify. When they give you an estimate and what you pay for on your annual contract includes maintenance of the facilities, maintenance of the vehicles, replacements of the vehicles. Yes, you do turn over the stations and your equipment to them, but if you were to ever leave the county, if you turned over a 5-year-old engine to them, they would be responsible to turn over a 5-year-old engine back to you at that point in time. You turn over the complete operation of it, but you still maintain the ownership of the stations, and we would be entitled to like equipment if you went down that path and decided that was not the right decision. You would get like equipment when you terminated that arrangement.
Can I call for the question?
Mr. Mayor, if there is a cost on that, I mean, I can bring the matter back if we find out later down the process that there is a cost.
You said there is no cost.
That's what our understanding is, there is no cost.
But
All right.
I've had experience in this with other cities, and I just would want to make sure, but in the event that the county is going to say there is going to be a charge to the city for doing what basically is a phase 1 analysis, that the city manager be instructed to bring this back for your further review.
Okay, I can add that to my motion for the city clerk, that if there is a cost to the city from the county, then that will be brought back to us for our final, for an additional decision.
Okay, there's been a call for the question. Motion by Sanderson, second by, motion by Councilwoman Sanderson, second by Councilmember Sykes. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? No. It fails 2-3. Do I have a motion to receive and file then?
Mr. Mayor, I think it's important to give the city manager some direction tonight. As of February 1st, we no longer have a redevelopment agency. We no longer have funding for the redevelopment agency. I think it's important that city manager be given direction to bring back the cuts necessary to make sure we're not deficit spending.
Second that.
I have no problem with that. Also, if we could add, I would like all travel budgets for any, whether council member or staff, or commissioners 100% all frozen, all travel. Want to make sure that's, we're not adding insult to injury.
All right. Is that a motion? I'll make a second the motion.
I made a motion. I didn't include that in my motion, so I'd like to vote on my motion first, and then you can make your motion if that's okay.
No problem. No
All
problem.
right, so my motion is to direct the city manager to come back with the necessary cuts.
And I made a second.
Motion and second. All those in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? 5-0. I'd like to also make a motion to freeze all unnecessary travel on our budgets right now, and to make sure it's all frozen.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? 5-0. Drop down to item number 2, review of cost-saving opportunities of city commissioners, or city commissions. Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Freeland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. As was just presented by Mr. Bachman, with the elimination of redevelopment, city staff have been tasked to reduce general fund subsidies of the various projects and programs of the city. At your January 17th City Council meeting, the City Council instructed city staff to do just that by requesting a report reviewing possible cost-saving opportunities of our city commissions. The City of West Covina has 5 commissions: Community Services, Human Resources, Planning, Public Art, and Senior Citizen. Each commissioner serving on the commissions receives a monthly stipend for serving as a commissioner. The Community Services, Public Arts, Human Resources, and Senior Citizens commissions meet every other month and earn a stipend of $100 a month, including the months that do not have scheduled meetings or if a meeting is canceled. The Planning Commission meets twice a month and receives a stipend of $150 a month. In addition, the Community Services, Planning, Senior Citizens, and Human Resources Commissions have used an allowance account to attend community events and conferences or to purchase name badges, polo shirts, etc. These allowances vary by each of the commissions. Contained in your staff report are various options the city staff is recommending in order to reduce that general fund subsidy of these commissions. The first item is the commission restructuring. City staff recommends the elimination of the Public Arts and Senior Citizens Commissions and have the duties of these commissions absorbed by the Planning and Community Services Commissions respectively. Prior to the establishment of these 2 commissions, the Planning and Community Services Commission addressed those duties assigned to these 2 commissions being recommended for elimination. Second item, reduction of the Community Services Commission. City staff recommends the reduction of the Community Services Commission from 10 members to 7 members. This will make it easier for the Community Services Commission to establish quorum for their meetings and reduce the general fund expenses to have this commission. Third item, elimination of allowance accounts. City staff recommends the elimination of all commission allowance accounts. This includes training of planning commissioners at the League of California Cities Planners Institute, as well as use by the different commissions to attend community events and whatnot. The fourth recommendation is city commission stipends. City staff recommends keeping the stipends for each of the 3 commissions at $100 per month, and the Planning Commission at $150 a month. Commissions that meet every other month will only be paid for the months they are scheduled to meet up to $600 a year. So instead of receiving the $1,200 a year that they are receiving, city staff is recommending that that be reduced to up to $600 a month, or a year, City staff would also recommend a portion of the Planning Commission stipend to be paid out of the Art and Public Places Fund. So with the elimination of the Public Arts Commission Fund, we can utilize some of those funds since the Planning Commission would absorb those duties. Annually, the City of West Covina expends approximately $49,300 for the operation of our city commissions. Of that, $43,150 is a general fund dollars, and $6,150 in the Art and Public Places Fund. By approving city staff's recommendation, a total savings of $32,650 can be realized, including $31,000 in general fund savings and $1,600 in Art and Public Places Fund. Lastly, depending on the council's action this evening, it will be necessary for city staff to bring back appropriate ordinances and resolutions for approval at a future city council meeting to implement whatever changes you recommend. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my staff report.
Is there any council members having questions?
I have a suggestion. I think instead of eliminating the Public Arts Commission, I think we should merge it with the Planning Commission I think that that way we're not eliminating it, and it still is a functioning body. So I would like to see that. I also don't like the elimination of the senior commission. I think that that's a valuable commission for our seniors. I do agree with all the other eliminations of the allowances, community services going from 10 to 7, and I think that was it. So I would like to make a motion to, if it's okay.
No, I just have another speaker on this.
Go ahead, then I'll make a motion after that.
Councilmember Sykes?
Thank you, Mayor. I definitely agree with Councilmember Herford when it comes to the elimination of the Senior Citizens Commission. I think that if we can combine Community Services and Senior Citizens Commission, one, perhaps we can approach it with 5 and 5. That way, we can retain the experience that we have now on the Senior Citizens Commission and have those merge with 5 members of the, or the, whatever we could retain as to reduce it to 5 on the Community Services Commission. So it'd be 10, but it would be a hybrid or a combination of Community Services and Senior Citizens Commission. That's my first idea. Now, I noticed that you had a number of 7. I'm not sure what's driving that number of 7, but if you do not see a way to get past having 7 on a combined commission of seniors and community service commissioners, then perhaps you can take 3 from the Senior Citizens Commission, perhaps the senior most members, and 4 from the now 10, reduce the Community Services Commission to where they have 4 that put the 2 together to give 7. And I would support the elimination of the other commissions, and of course by law we have to have the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Lane, then Councilwoman Sanderson.
Yeah, looking at this, I was looking at the allowance accounts, which are quite exorbitant, I think, because when I was on the Planning Commission, we didn't have this. I think we could go ahead and remove all the allowance accounts as staff, as the council is doing as well. I have no problem with merging public arts and planning. I have no problem with the community services, either going 10 to 7 commissioners, or as Councilmember Sykes has mentioned, doing 5 and 5, whatever the pleasure of the council is. I'm fine with that. I think all commissions that meet once every other month should only be paid for the months they meet. Also, I think planning, as I see it now, a lot of the times they only meet once per month anyway, so why don't we just move it to once per month to save on the cost of staff? Those are just my ideas. See what council thinks.
Councilwoman Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Manager, the only commission that we do need by law is the Planning Commission that we confirmed at the last meeting. I've been thinking about this for a while, and where I'm coming from is 2 options. One would be a temporary suspension of all commissions, but it doesn't sound like the council wants to, not have these people in our community, and so and I think they're a valued asset to us in many options. I think that we could have would possibly be option 2, which would be a volunteer type of situation, and just on a temporary type issue. I did talk to the city manager about that, and we could do something like that. I don't know if the commissioners, I don't know if we can talk to them. It's not like we need to do a big survey or a big reach out, but we could talk to the commissioners and see if they would be willing to do something along those lines. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I don't believe that we've met with any of the commissioners at this point. And then my other question is, if we are going to reduce, like some of the other council have mentioned, what would be the elimination process of which commissioners would we have to take that to the vote? Because I know a lot of this stuff is already, on the books on how we have a certain protocol. But that would be my opinion, is either a temporary suspension of all commissions but planning, or a volunteer type of a program, if we could legally work that with the approval of in talking with the commissioners and making sure that everybody would want to do some type of a temporary volunteer situation.
Nope.
Go ahead,
Councilman.
I just want to make a comment on, really the savings on a commission is not so much the stipend that a commissioner receives, it's the staff time that's involved in setting up the agenda, being there to conduct the meeting, and researching issues that come out of the commission. So the stipend, even though I agree that commissioners should be paid, since most of them meet bi-monthly, they shouldn't be paid $100 a month, they should be paid per meeting. But I think and I don't support asking a commissioner to serve the community for totally no stipend at all. So I would not support that. But I just think it's important to understand that the savings comes a lot of times from the staff that are involved in the commission process.
I agree with that last statement. It even talks about in the report, it doesn't give a number, and I wish we would have had the number. It just says that this does not include the cost of staff. It just leaves the question there blank. The way it's been worded, so I want to make sure I word my comments slightly different. I'm not talking about the elimination of commissions. I'm talking about the consolidation. So I want to make sure there's a difference. I do support community services and senior services being consolidated together. I don't mind them having monthly meetings, and one would be on the senior commission. Since they meet every other month now, it's no difference. One meeting would be senior commission that month. The other meeting would be the community service commission type of items. I also support the consolidation, not the elimination of the art commission, but planning commission and art commission being consolidated together and coming up with 10 on the community service senior commission, 5 on the planning commission, art commission, and the human resources commission, which deals with our labor issues, to be left alone. We also have 2 other commissions that are groups that aren't even spoken about here that do not get paid already. That's the Youth Council and the Youth Sports Council, or the Youth Commission and Youth Sports Council. Those are other organizations that we have that the Youth Council meets. They do not receive stipend or some of this other type of stuff either. So I have no problem with that. And also on the travel, budget, and conference, I thought my motion included all. I said the word all, so I'm a little confused that you're talking about it again. I thought that's already all been frozen. So I'm confused by my first motion that was voted on 5-0 prior to taking up this item, that all travel budgets and conference budgets is frozen, period. But that's where I'm coming from. I'm concerned with doing the hybrid numbers, taking it down to 7. I know staff has tried to do that for a number of years, and I think by consolidating some of these commissions, I actually think you make them more well-rounded by having some people that may have specialists in seniors combined with people that may be more community. And not that they both can't do both, but I'm saying that this, to me, gives a well-rounded, no different having planning commissioners and art commissioners merged together where you get some of both. To me, it makes the commission overall more well-rounded. In my personal opinion, I'm only one person. I also think that you should only someone mentioned the meetings. I think there should be a cap of how many meetings a month, and you should only get paid by the meetings you actually attend. Not that if you don't attend, you don't get paid. Either way, I mean, all 5 of us have different ideas. This is going to be an interesting one, so I look forward to someone making a motion and finding who's diving in.
Mr. Mayor, I think I have ideas to what the council's looking at here. First off, reduce the stipend by 50%, eliminate all allowances, consolidate Senior and Community Services Commission with 5 and 5. And I'm going to make this a motion. Consolidate Planning and Public Arts with 5 members, and keep the other commissions, the Human Resources, and do we have another one?
Well, I said the Youth Council and stuff, and the Youth Sports Commission. The Youth Sports Commission is made up of presidents of sports leagues. The Youth Council is made up
And
of high
that's a
schoolers.
subcommittee of the other commissions, so I'll make that my motion.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Lane.
Was that in your motion, was it also the consolidation of the commissions of senior and community services?
Correct.
For
5 and 5.
5 and 5 as, okay. I'll second it.
And Planning Commission is this 5 total, making sure I understand. Human Resources Commission is 5 total, and the Youth Council and the Youth Sports Council, which are left alone. I have a motion and a second. If there's no other comments, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
4-1. I do not have, that's the last item on our meeting. I don't have any things for adjournment. If there's any adjournments that I may not be aware of, if any council member may have. Otherwise, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned 5-0.